Settle in, dear listener, and let the soft glow of the moon guide your thoughts to distant mountains and ancient voices. For tonight, we speak of the voice, not the one you use to whisper or to sing, but the voice of the dragons and the magic that lies within their words. This voice is no ordinary gift. It is the power to shape reality with sound itself, a language woven from the fabric of the world. And it is this very gift that you, dear traveler, will slowly come to understand as you journey through the winding path of Skyrim's main quest. Not only would dragons soar once more across the skies of Tamriel, but the player, you, would be given the chance to wield the words of power themselves. This sacred speech, known as the Thaum, would grant you the kind of strength spoken of in old legends. Superhuman feats born not from might or steel, but from breath and syllable. But why does this power exist in the world at all? Why do these shouts stir the air and shake the mountains? The lore tells us this. The voice is an echo of the ancient Nords, a tradition passed down through time, rooted in their deepest heritage. The thumb is no new invention. It traces its origins all the way back to the earliest days of Elder Scrolls lore, even before Skyrim had been dreamt into being. It was Michael Kirkbride in the Pocket Guide to the Empire, released with Redguard in the year 1998, who first whispered this secret to those who looked closely. There, nestled in the text, was the seed of something vast and resonant. Since that moment, the keepers of the Elder Scrolls have been reminding us, gently and consistently, that this ancient power is real, and that its roots run deep into the heart of Tamriel's mythic past. And Skyrim was only the beginning. Even in the years that followed, with new stories told in Elder Scrolls Online, the echoes of the voice still rang true. More shouts were uncovered, more mysteries revealed. Little gifts for those who seek to understand, to learn, and to remember. Yes, you may have seen many a tale and video unfold, each celebrating the mighty dragon shouts. But tonight, let us turn our gaze toward the whole tapestry. Those tales told before Skyrim, those whispered after, and all the quiet truths tucked in between. Before we dive fully into the Thaum, the words of power, the shouts of dragons, and the tongue they speak. Dovasil. Let me gently define them for you, for I will speak their names often, and it is best to know the shape of the words before we travel too far. Now, take a deep breath. Let the wind carry you back, and the words carry you forward. The story is only just beginning. Now, before we wander too deep into the old stone halls and windswept peaks, there's something we should clear up. Something even seasoned adventurers often get tangled in. And yes, you'd be absolutely right to think it gets confusing sometimes. Let's sort it all out, quietly, like one might untangle the strands of a spider's web by firelight. You see, the terms Thaum and dragon shouts often get used like they mean the same thing. And most of the time, that's okay. They're close enough. But if we pause and look a little closer, there's a small, meaningful difference between the two. The thome is the source. It is the ancient magic that lies dormant within someone, something deep and inherent. It's not just words, but a force drawn from within, a power shaped by will and voice. Now, when someone uses that inner force and speaks the words aloud in the dragon tongue, that's a shout. A dragon shout is the action, the outward expression, the spell, if you will, cast by harnessing that inner power. So if the thome is the fire in the hearth, the shout is the warmth it sends out into the room. You could say that every time you shout, you're calling forth your thome and shaping it into something real. And what makes that shout possible? Words of power. Each shout is made from these words, always spoken in the ancient dragon language. Imagine them like spells from a school of magic, each one holding weight, meaning, and power. These words aren't random syllables. They are ancient, deliberate, and tied to the bones of the world. A full shout, you might have noticed, is made up of 3 such words. That's the complete form, the full strength. But yes, as you've seen in Skyrim and Elder Scrolls Online, it's entirely possible to speak just 1 or 2 and still call forth a lesser version of the power. A whisper of flame instead of a roaring inferno, but still potent in the right hands. Now let's talk about Dovazol. This is the dragon language itself. The phrase means dragon voice, and it's the tongue in which all these mighty words are spoken. They are written in Dovazol, drawn there with a strange magic that seems to speak directly to the soul of the dragonborn. When you approach, when you stand in reverent silence before those walls, you are not just reading, you are learning. The word enters you, becomes part of you, so that your thome might grow stronger and your shouts might reach further. So, to bring it all together, in the Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim, you seek out these word walls carved in Dovazol. They whisper to you a single word of power. That word awakens your thome, and in time, you learn to channel that power outward into dragon shouts. Each word adds depth and strength, turning a single call into something mighty. That's how it works. Are you still with me? Good, you've done well to follow so far. And now that we've untangled the meanings and names, we're ready to begin the heart of the tale. There will be 3 chapters to this story. First, we'll explore the lore shouts, those that exist only in written texts, never heard aloud in Skyrim or ESO. Some of these are very old indeed, echoing back to times when the world was still raw and wild. Ready your thoughts, and let's begin. Let's continue our quiet journey through the echoes of ancient power. We've untangled the meanings of the thome, the dragon shouts, the words of power, and the sacred tongue of Dovazol. With all that in hand, we're ready to begin the first part of our tale. Those shouts that live not in battle cries or echoes across Skyrim's peaks, but in the oldest texts, hidden in books and ballads, some as recent as those found in the Elder Scrolls Online. This first chapter is about lore shouts, those whispered of in myth and song, but never taught to the dragonborn, never spoken aloud in your hearing. Some come from older tales, but none of them are paired with documented words of power. So, what you'll encounter here are not official, learnable shouts like the ones carved into Skyrim's word walls. Instead, these are interpretations, fragments of history pieced together with borrowed words from other shouts, carefully arranged to form what might have been. Let us begin with aging. A strange and somber shout. This one appears in the tale The 5 Songs of King Wulfharth. In it, we're told that Wulfharth, or Sleeden in this context, used the shout to age his companions. Boys turned suddenly into men by the force of his voice. But as with all old magic, there's a deeper layer beneath the surface. This could very well be a kind of restore age spell, or perhaps even a counter to another kind of shout, one that reversed age. For you see, in the old song, Old Knocker, a very curious thing happens. Alduin himself is summoned, and with a single terrible act, turns Wulfharth and his 500 warriors into 6-year-olds. Childlike, small, helpless. But even in that form, Wulfharth did not surrender. With Shaw's aid, he managed to teach himself a shout, a re-aging spell of sorts, to restore his warriors to their former strength. Yet magic always takes its toll. Though his companions were restored, Wulfharth himself grew so old in the act that he died from it. A final, selfless sacrifice born from ancient knowledge. A bittersweet tale carried on the wind. Next, we come to a shout with a much darker edge. Rest in Sovngarde, banished to oblivion. As grim as it sounds, this too comes from the 5 Songs of King Wulfharth. It tells of a moment when Wulfharth, in righteous fury, shouted an orc chieftain straight into what the text calls hell. Now, it's true. The word hell has different meanings depending on where and when in the lore you look. But in this case, I think it's reasonable to take hell as referring to oblivion. Many references to hell in older Elder Scrolls texts were precursors to what we now understand as oblivion, the realm of Daedra and forgotten gods. This shout may have been an offering of sorts, as the tale notes that Wulfharth's actions glorified him in the eyes of the old gods. But even if it was an offering, I think it supports the idea even more strongly. This shout was not just punishment, it was exile, a banishment into realms beyond mortal reach. So yes, these are not your typical shouts. They are not spoken by dragons, nor carved into stone. They are remembered in song and myth, passed down in verses that echo through the halls of time. No known words of power are attached to them, and yet they feel no less real. In crafting custom versions of them, using pieces of official shout language, we glimpse what might have been, powers that echo with sorrow, sacrifice, and awe. Now, don't worry, we'll soon move from these quiet echoes to shouts actually heard in Elder Scrolls Online, the second part of our tale. There, we'll explore those dragon calls that never made their way into the Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim, including some unusual abilities that blur the line between shouts and something else entirely. And finally, we'll turn our attention to a special category, the mysterious shouts of Skyrim that the player can never learn. There are only about 8 of them, but they're fascinating nonetheless. From the far-reaching call of the greybeards to the strange and mighty things Mirok does, these deserve a moment in the light, even if there's not a whole tome's worth to say. Now we press further into the fog of half-remembered verses and almost lost names, where shouts grow stranger and more elusive. These next few entries are still part of that first chapter, shouts found in the lore, but each of them carries even more mystery than the last. They're fragments, glimmers of power seen only in passing lines, in texts written just before Skyrim's release, and buried deep in Kirkbride's writing. But even these whispers deserve to be heard in the quiet of night. First comes the close-range teleport shout, simple in concept, yet wondrous in execution. It's a form of literal teleportation. From the text, Children of the Sky, it's said that the caster can move instantly to wherever the shout lands. Now, that might sound a little like whirlwind sprint at first glance, but the feeling is different. Whirlwind sprint surges you forward with unstoppable momentum, like riding the wind itself. This shout, though, it's more like stepping through the air. A blink, a shift. Its range, perhaps, depends on the strength or mastery of the speaker. If you've seen short-range teleportation in other fantasy, like Dungeons and Dragons, or even certain vampire-themed mods, that gives you a solid picture. It's sudden, controlled, and silent in a way that wind never is. Then there's the enigmatic dagger shout. Its purpose seems obvious: to stab, to pierce, but the details are elusive. This one appears in a fascinating text from early 2011, when Kirkbride released a full accounting of Eve Grimoire's 500 companions. Every name, every shield, brother and sword, sister. And among them is one, Valimar of the Dagger Shout. That's all we're given. No elaboration. But in the culture of the Nords, where names are often earned, not given lightly, this title likely has meaning. Maybe it calls forth a blade of wind, sharp enough to slice armor like paper. Or perhaps it manifests an actual spectral dagger to strike a foe. Whatever the case, the name sticks like the tip of a well-hurled knife, and so we honor it. Now brace yourself, because this next one is strange and poetic. Drunken Snow, or Ode Torkon. Another entry from the 500 companions, and one that's nearly impossible to pin down. The phrase alone leaves room for wild imagination. Does it mean the snow itself becomes drunk upon hearing the shout? Or is it more literal? A method of melting and consuming snow for survival in the frozen wilds? There are two ways to read it. First, whenever Ode Torkon shouts, the snow around him wobbles and warps, growing slick and unsteady, perhaps even liquefied, making it harder for enemies to cross. A defensive shout, not meant to kill but to hinder. The second possibility is more intimate. Maybe he could drink the snow, converting it into a source of sustenance, something his army could rely on in the bleakest of campaigns. That would explain the name. Torkon, a half-cask, half-man, quenching his thirst in ways no mead could match. Both readings hold weight, but the former, The idea of the snow itself becoming unstable and treacherous feels just a bit more likely. A shout that turns the battlefield itself against your foes. And finally, we arrive at a shout named Earth Breathing. Galsoza, the name alone, is evocative. It rolls off the tongue like stone grinding against stone. While there's no expanded tale behind it yet, the phrase stirs images of communion with the land itself. Perhaps a shout that lets its speaker sense the heartbeat of Nirn, or causes the ground to tremble and shift in response. It's easy to imagine a warrior standing still atop a mountain, taking in a breath of stone, and then exhaling it back as power. Each of these shouts, though foggy, though wrapped in uncertain text, feels grounded in the lore, tied to real characters and legends. They may never have been shouted in game, never carved into word walls or spoken by dragons, but they're there, woven into the great tapestry of Nordic myth. And with these echoes stirring the edges of your thoughts, we draw a little closer to the second part of our tale, the Elder Scrolls Online shouts, powers witnessed with our own eyes and ears, yet missing from the mountains of Skyrim. But before that, let the night grow still, and let these older whispers settle around you like falling snow. Our journey slips into the realm of the stranger shouts, the ones whispered about in the 36 lessons of Vivek, and echoed in the far corners of Kirkbride's more experimental texts. These are powers that walk a tightrope between poetry and spellcraft, never quite settling in the realm of straightforward magic. And yet, you can feel the weight of truth in them, as though the world remembers even when the words become murky. Let's begin with mud necromancy, a peculiar and almost grotesque form of resurrection. This one isn't easily categorized. It appears in Sermon 9 of the 36 Lessons of Vivek, where we hear of a northern man who could raise his fallen warriors by using the very earth, mud and soil, as the medium. After he was seen eating the soil, his dead soldiers rose to fight again, though their movements were slower, like memory half faded. Now, to be clear, the act of consuming the earth, whatever that means, is probably not part of a shout. The sermon is ambiguous, as it often is. Was it literal? Was it metaphor? A form of magical absorption? Or perhaps, as the sermon hints, it was the act of breathing the earth, drawing in the strength of Nirn like a deep and reverent inhale. It's difficult to say, but what does seem plausible is that a shout, something like a command to the bones in the soil, might have been what truly stirred the dead. And this wouldn't be the only mention of such strange earth magic in Kirkbride's body of work. There are other tales, other hints, where the land responds to the voice, not just with storms or fire, but with life. Next, we move to something louder, more destructive, earth-shattering, known in some circles by the strange phrase, ghoul for soul, the power to split stone, perhaps even whole landscapes. One passage from The Guardian and The Traitor suggests that such a shout might have caused Solstheim to tear away from Skyrim, severed during Mirok's great conflict. That's a bold claim, but not an impossible one. There's precedent for this kind of destructive power. In Olaf and the Dragon, we hear of shouts that can split the sky and shatter the ground itself. Now, it's worth noting that both these sources come from narrators whose reliability is well questionable at best. But even if exaggerated, they point towards something real. The Thaum is a force of nature. Storm, wind, fire, time itself. So a shout that splits the very earth feels not just feasible, but likely. And now, the most esoteric of tonight's entries. Event Day Newman. That's not an official name, of course. It's more like an idea, a culmination. This one is layered and hard to pin down. Imagine a shout that does more than damage or command. Instead, it calculates. It reads the flow of a battle like a living script and imprints its vision onto those who hear it. Guiding sword arms, planting instinct, crafting victory with every breath. It's said to have been used by one of Vivek's enemies, though Vivek, ever the master of narrative, claims to have overcome it with something he calls the milk finger. A symbol, perhaps, of unpredictable power. But even if the tale is exaggerated, the shout itself feels like something ancient and tactical. Maybe it doesn't just command, maybe it foresees. Maybe it pushes fate itself just far enough to tip the scales. If that sounds overpowered, well, maybe it was. Maybe that's why Vivek included it, so that his victory would seem all the more miraculous. But if you strip away the metaphor, what remains is compelling. A shout that embeds a battle plan into the hearts of your soldiers. Not mind control, not prophecy, just pure, instinctual coordination. A unison of will. And so, these three, mud that gives rise to shambling warriors, voices that split the land beneath your feet, and echoes that shape the outcome of wars. Join the chorus of half-forgotten powers. These are not the shouts of player characters or word walls. These are myths sung by gods and half-remembered heroes, but their presence in the lore, however vague, hums just beneath the surface. Now the wind turns restless again, and with it come more forgotten echoes. Shouts whose meanings are carved into mountain stone and wrapped in the riddles of ancient sermons. These are voices that ripple the world in stranger ways, subtler than fire or frost, but no less powerful. As you close your eyes, let's wander through these next hidden Thaum, one by one, as if we're reading them by firelight on the path to High Hrothgar itself. First, flooding. Simply that floods the land. That's what an old tablet says, nestled in the stone halls of High Hrothgar. The words are plain, but also open to interpretation. It could be metaphor, something poetic, referring to the power of Stormcall. A shout so strong it can bring down endless rain, blacken the skies, and batter the world with tempestuous force. But for the sake of completeness, let's entertain the more fantastic image. A shout that truly summons floodwaters, that fills valleys and rivers and washes armies from the land like leaves on the tide. A conjured tide of force and fury shaped by voice and will. Whether literal or poetic, this shout speaks of dominion over the sky and sea alike. Next, we move to form change. This one is subtler, whispered through the verses of Sermon 9 once more. It said that one Bob Two-Tongue had this power, a shout that could transform either the self or others. It's never spelled out outright, but the clues are there. His raiders were few, yet they struck swiftly and eluded capture. They swept through the west hinterlands, slaying scouts and trappers, those who should have been best at avoiding danger. Something doesn't add up unless those raiders weren't what they seemed. Perhaps they became wolves or birds, or perhaps they took on the faces of the very people they hunted. Form change may well be the Thune's answer to illusion, a shout that reshapes flesh and fools the senses. Then comes heart roaring, a power far more psychological than physical. It seems most closely aligned with the bend will shout, a forceful redirection of another's spirit. But in the text, the shout does more than bend. It sends the soul back. The line says it was used to send a spirit back to the Hortator as an assassin. This suggests a deeply manipulative power, one that doesn't merely command, but converts. A form of influence that twists purpose, turning friend into foe, ally into instrument. The devouring spoken of may be metaphor, swallowing another's will until only your desires remain. It's a whisper in the heart, not a roar on the battlefield. Dangerous, intimate, and nearly invisible. Finally, we end this passage with the mighty hurricane. This shout, referred to as wood for time, does more than whip up wind. It births a full tempest. You might be tempted to chalk this one up to Skyrim's cyclone shout, but the source tells us more. In one of Kirkbride's obscure but nonetheless official writings, Tiber Septim himself uses this shout while torturing a shackled Cyrus. The first syllable of that shout is wold, the same used in Whirlwind Sprint. But this is no simple dash of speed. The implication here is vast. This shout doesn't merely conjure a breeze. It unleashes chaos, lightning, tidal force, the wrath of the atmosphere itself. It turns time sideways, stacking seconds into thunder until the world can no longer stand. These, then, are voices carved from silence, flooding, form change, heart roaring, hurricane. They are echoes that stir the soul more than the senses, that call not only the weather and the body, but the mind and the tide. They come from texts forgotten, corners unlit, but still resonate with the deep magic of the voice. Now we return once more to the crackling pages of the past. Quiet now, the wind has slowed, and the flames of our campfire dance low and steady. More shouts come to us, not of battle and ruin, but of craft and subtle wonder. These are the softer voices of the Thaum, and yes, they whisper, but they still shape the world. First comes a moment of tension, hurricane again, when Cyrus, bound in chains, tells Tiber Septim to stop speaking in hurricane. It's likely not a metaphor. No, that was no poetic turn of phrase. It was a plea for the storm to end, quite literally. Septim's shout was not merely loud or forceful. It was the storm, the voice that churned the sky and lashed the earth. But even the fiercest tempest must quiet, and from that storm's fading echoes comes something gentler. Kill breath, a humble and wondrous gift. This one is perhaps the most peaceful of all. a companion to the builder rather than the warrior. In the 500 companions corpus, there is a name for Medal the builder, and it's said his whispers could bake bricks. Just that. No fireballs, no explosions, just whispers that hardened clay-shaped walls, built homes. A shout of creation, not destruction. You could argue it's a specialized version of fire breath, but where that scorches, this shapes. It's the difference between a wildfire and a hearth. Controlled heat, the kind that lets civilizations rise. A shout that warms the world rather than burns it. And then there's lamplight, another delicate touch. Yes, we've seen fire used for war, but this is a whisper to flame. Not a roar, but a spark. The word appears in 3 separate texts before Skyrim, all attributed to older lore from Kirkbride. It's not just about fire, it's precision. Think of a tiny flame dancing on your fingertip, summoned to light a lamp, warm a room, read a book by. If the wind dagger shout exists, something sharp and surgical, then why not a flame equally precise? Perhaps it's a single syllable variant of fire breath, or perhaps it's something entirely its own. Adding more words of power can deepen a shout's impact, and this one might be refined to burn just enough oil, just enough wick to gently light the dark. Now we come to Moonshift. The name alone feels like something out of a dream. Soft, mystical, elusive. This one sits far out on the speculative edge, even more so than the others. There's little to go on, only whispers and fragments. But let's imagine, just for a moment, what would a shout called Moonshift do? Would it turn night to day? Would it alter the tides, or pull shadows across the land like curtains? Would it change your form under moonlight, like the lycanthropes of legend? Or perhaps, more simply, it speaks to cycles, of time, of change, of the natural rhythms of the world. Maybe it doesn't command the moon so much as sink the caster to its pull. A shout of transformation, mood, magic, a voice spoken not to command the world, but to move with it. So here, in the gentle hush of midnight, we've heard the softer side of the voice. Kill, breath, lamplight, moonshift, powers not to conquer, but to create. They remind us that the voice is more than a weapon. It is a force of nature, a tool for shaping the world in both fury and stillness. First, we look skyward. Moonphase shift. This rare shout appears in the tale of Drosera, a curious piece of lore found both in Skyrim and Elder Scrolls Online. It tells of Wolfhearth. Yes, the same Wolfhearth, who, during the climactic clash at Red Mountain, spoke to the moons Massa and Secunda, and bid them reveal their full glory. That's no small feat, and it wasn't for spectacle alone. The Khajiit, long attuned to the dance of the moons, were changed by this act. Some even transformed into the mighty Senshi, a form strong and swift enough to be ridden as mounts across the battlefield. Now, from a law-minded perspective, that's staggering. You see, moon phases are typically caused by the sun's light. Not motion, but Wolfhearth's shout didn't wait for the sun. It forced the moons forward in time, shifting their phase. That's why the word of power chosen here is one related to age. The shout doesn't rotate the heavens, it advances them. Not hours, not days, just enough to summon the moons into fullness, and with them the true strength of the Khajiit, a soft murmur through time echoed in starlight. Next, the earth stirs underfoot, and a command rises from the mud, marshalling. This shout comes again from Sermon 9, where we also learned of a strange and grim necromantic shout, but this seems to be something more, something organized. We imagine the caster standing tall upon a battlefield of mud and ash, giving a single breath, not of fury, but of command. It might raise soldiers, it might guide them. Perhaps it's a variant of battle fury, a shout that doesn't just strengthen but coordinates, calls troops into lines, focuses their will. It may even bring order to the shambling undead. A general's voice in a field of silence, a shout to turn chaos into strategy. And now the air grows cold, not just with wind, but with a different kind of stillness. Never melt. You've heard of it, even if you didn't realize. In Skyrim, during the White Phial quest, you were sent to find snow. Snow that has never melted, not even under the sun's brightest gaze. The Greybeards are said to have taught this snow its defiance, and so it endures upon the peak of the throat of the world. That's no ordinary ice. That's not even enchanted frost. That is will made manifest. A voice spoke, and the snow obeyed. And what's more, that snow, once gathered, was used by an ancient alchemist, one who, in his undying persistence, became a draugr to craft the fabled White Phial. It held the properties of the snow, enchanted and everlasting. So perhaps this shout doesn't just keep snow from melting. Perhaps it can preserve, enhance, or enchant anything it touches. A whisper that halts change. A moment made eternal in crystalline white. These shouts are rare, yes, but they show the true range of the Therm. Not only fire and fury, but time, order, and preservation. In the quiet of the night, when the moons shine full and the snow does not melt, when soldiers gather to a single breath and time itself seems to pause, you'll remember, not all power is loud. Some of it whispers. This next one, Storm Consumption, is where the lore takes a sudden, grim turn. Like a still hush before a massive downpour. Found in the 5 songs of King Wolfhearth, this shout is implied to literally consume a storm. Not redirect it, not whether it devour it. Wolfhearth's warriors are said to have shouted storms away, as if they were eating them. And the wording doesn't come across as metaphor. It's described like a ritual, or an instinct, almost as if the storm was food and the Thaum was a jaw. While this might sound far-fetched, it echoes other devouring motifs in the lore. Alduin, the World Eater, consumes the world with his voice. So a smaller version, targeting just a storm, isn't completely out of bounds. If the Thun can raise armies, shift moons, and turn clouds to bile, then drawing in the raw energy of a tempest might just be another ancient application. Perhaps it grants temporary power, or simply restores strength after the rigors of battle. And let's not overlook the link to sky sickness. If there are shouts that sour the sky, there could be others that cleanse it by swallowing the bad winds whole. Perhaps it grants temporary power, or simply restores strength after the rigors of battle. And let's not overlook the link to sky sickness. If there are shouts that sour the sky, there could be others that cleanse it by swallowing the bad winds whole. Now, how about that strange one? Summon shoes. Yes, really. Straight from Kirkbride's 500 Companions corpus. The tale briefly describes Rebek's hearth-husband Joff simply shouting and producing shoes. That's it. It's one of those wonderfully mundane shouts that tells us not every Thaum was meant for fire and fury. Some were for survival, for warmth, for not dying from frostbite on your way up the throat of the world. Maybe it was a conjuration shout, pulling boots from some divine wardrobe. Or maybe the man had mastered the subtle art of forming practical things from the voice alone. Either way, it paints a picture of what daily life in the old tongue might have looked like. Less grandstanding, more boots. Then there's sharpened blade, Zulan. What's safe? Simple in name, but its implications are sharp as the weapon it affects. The Children of the Sky book, which appears from the Elder Scrolls 3 through Elder Scrolls Online, gives us this gem. It's easy to imagine this being a long-lost shout that improved a weapon's edge, especially if one considers how Morrowind and earlier titles had item durability. Maybe the shout didn't just hone the blade, it blessed it, made it keen enough to cut through even enchantments. In Skyrim, where weapons don't dull, it might have been redundant. But in the days of earlier mechanics, this could have been a tactician's dream. And finally, we return to something chilling and unnatural. Puppeteering, from that macabre and surreal story of Tiber Septim's encounter with Cyrus. It's a disturbing scene. Tiber kills a pirate, guts him, jams a blade into his throat, and keeps him talking. Not metaphorically. The pirate screams, "You're gonna keep me alive through this all with that devil's wind of yours in my own lungs." Now, if this is a shout, then it's the most horrifying use of the Thaum we've seen. A manipulation of breath itself, forcing speech into a corpse. And that term, devil's wind, evokes the power of voice as a weapon, a tool, and now as an abomination. Could it be that the shout hijacks the body's vocal cords, breathes through the dead? It toes the line between necromancy and horror, and it's one of the rare times the voice is used not for command or clarity or creation, but for sheer psychological domination. Each of these whispers from the lore reminds us, there's no one way the Thaum was used. Not in the Elder Days, not by Wolfhearth, not by Vivek's strange foes, not even by humble soldiers shouting for boots. The voice is the self, spoken aloud, and just like the self, it can be shaped into anything. Storm, consumption, knock, look, strewn, swallows, thunderstorms. It sounds like something straight out of an old Nord myth, and in many ways, it is. Unlike the clear skies, shout in Skyrim, which simply parts the heavens with a single call, this one consumes the storm itself. In the 5 songs of King Wolfhearth, it's described as a way Wolfhearth kept his army warm, by swallowing the storm whole. This shout also happens to be the origin of one of his many titles, Breath of Kine. It's one of the few examples we have where the Thaum isn't just used on the environment, it's consumed, internalized, taken in for a specific, very human need: warmth. Now, this could easily be dismissed as a poetic retelling of the clear sky's shout. After all, no physical consequence is described after Wolfhearth swallows the storm. That might nudge us toward chalking it up to another case of an unreliable narrator, one who maybe just saw a sky clear and gave it more flair than necessary. But even with that possibility, this shout earns its place among all the other consumption-style Thu'um in the lore. Most of them are used as resources, breathing in snow, ash, or even earth. This one stands out. It's the most prominent shout where the act of consuming is itself the full power, not just a step in a process, familiar yet different, and that's worth something. Surety, the Thu'um of confidence, of certainty, of instant persuasion. This one's a little abstract, but no less intriguing. We find it in Sermon 9 of the 36 lessons of Vivek, tied to the same character who possessed the shout of form change. It's named directly Surety. The power manifests during a debate with Vivek, where the speaker is described as falling, not from violence, but from being outmaneuvered by words. Vivek alone could understand his two-layered speech. This moment suggests the Thalm had layers, like a riddle wrapped in a charm, meant to win battles not of steel, but of thought and wordplay. Now, it might sound strange to include a shout that wins arguments instead of wars, but if you've read the 36 lessons, you know exactly what kind of flex this is. That entire series exists to portray Vivek as a master not only of combat, but of language and mythic authority. Of course, he'd overcome a Thalm of persuasion. How else would you prove someone like Vivek is a cut above? Surety is what you'd use to win speech checks in real life. The Thu'um of absolute conviction. A voice that bends fate itself to your will. And it's a reminder that in the Elder Scrolls universe, power isn't always about shouting the loudest. Sometimes it's about knowing exactly what to say, and saying it with the kind of certainty that turns even the gods' heads. As for the Nor, his mastery over that power really complements his knack for form change. The man built himself like a shadow, slipping through places unseen, wearing different faces, vanishing into the folds of the world. But there's something about his duel with Vivek that always stays with me. See, Vivek had to make himself invisible for the confrontation. And I can't help but wonder why. Was it the only strategy that could secure a victory? Or was it something deeper? Some unspoken caution or fear? Maybe Vivek needed to watch without being watched, to understand nor without being understood in return. Now, wind riding, Khan, bow, tar, a whisper from World-Leading 101. One of those quiet Kirkbride texts where the lines between myth and memory start to blur. In it, a divine named Ain uses the wind itself as a vessel carrying soldiers, and even their fallen, high into the sky, straight to the doors of Hyroth. It wasn't for glory. It was to avoid a total collapse, a retreat that had already begun to fray at the seams. The wind lifted them away from failure, like a mother pulling her child out of the tide. The context leans toward mythic. Ain is a divine, after all, and it's entirely possible this was some divine sorcery rather than a true Thu'um. but the text says it plain. It was a shout. And when you think about how tightly Kinnereth's name is wound around the winds and the way of the voice, it becomes harder to dismiss the possibility that a Nord, someone steeped in that same tradition, could learn to ride the sky just the same. And with that, the path comes to a close. For now, these were the 25 shouts whispered in lore, spoken in mirth, and scattered across the writings of scholars and poets. None of them found their way into the game we played, and that's a loss worth mourning. I would have loved to see the moon shout brought to life, especially during the nights I spent wandering beneath Massa and Secunda for my moon's peace. But let's not stop here. If you're still with me, still listening beneath the hush of the stars, then follow me onward. The next stretch of our journey takes us to the dragon shouts of the Elder Scrolls Online. 18 new powers, born from the breath of ancient Wymes after the Elsewar expansion. This time, every word is accounted for, documented. We'll keep to the same rhythm as before, moving word by word, but here's the key difference. We won't be revisiting anything already usable in Skyrim. Fusro Dar, we know it well. These next ones, these are the shouts that remained hidden in the smoke and sky. Let's settle in and begin our walk through the 18 shouts of the Elder Scrolls Online. Those hidden words of power left out of Skyrim, but no less rooted in the voice. Animate statue. There's something eerie about stone given life, and this one, this shout, pulls directly from that fear. In the battle against Nephintus, you'll witness statues once frozen in reverent silence awaken and turn their gaze upon you. One by one, they rise to serve their master, not by will, but by command. Nephintus himself is labeled an Ulkosh pretender, a false prophet cloaked in divine imagery. It's no coincidence then that the words of power translate to false gods, slave. A little heavy-handed, perhaps, on the part of the designers, but that might be the point. The statues don't serve Ulkosh, they serve the illusion of him, animated by deception. Cataclysm, God, too. Nah, a phrase that crackles with tension. This shout comes from the fire dragon, Jornashim, during the trials of Sunspire. In the heat of battle, he raises a pillar of fire that erupts across the battlefield. A brutal ring of flame that lashes out in all directions. It's more than just damage, it's fury unbound. The dragon's wrath made manifest. These dragons aren't just casting spells, they are shouting, using the voice to speak devastation into the world. Earthquake, good Martus. These words precede a thunderous strike from the sky to the ground below. This time, it's the frost dragon Locustus, and during his encounter, the tremor rolls out like a wave, knocking back those caught unaware. While it could easily be mistaken for another version of unrelenting force, the way it's described, the way it feels, it's different. The literal translation, ground full strike, paints a clearer picture. A sudden impact from above, shattering the calm. And while we can't say tectonic plates are splitting beneath us, the force of it makes you wonder. Earth spike, Keth, Kree, Gol. These are the words behind the sudden eruption of jagged stone. Dragons across Tamriel use this, sometimes choosing a location with unsettling precision. One moment, the ground is quiet. The next, spears of earth shoot skyward, forcing even the most seasoned warrior to keep their footing sharp. It's a favorite among the lesser-known dragons and mini-bosses like Balok Dan, and it's easy to see why. It's territorial, controlling, and chaotic. The earth itself becomes a weapon, a sudden betrayal beneath your feet. Firestorm, a name whispered in anxious awe, sends blazing firebombs down from the heavens. It's said that this is Narentus's favorite call to the stars. He'll leap to his sacred stone perch, raise his arms, and shout toward the heavens, igniting the skies in a cascade of flame. And here's where it gets curious. When he does this, flame Atronox begin to emerge, rising from the scorched earth as if summoned by the shout itself. I'd wager it's the same curious force behind the strange and potent enhancements drawn from Skyrim's black books. A storm of ice follows not far behind. Fool, they might say, he's calling upon it now. Shards of ice with edges sharp as truth fall like rain, slicing through the air in a fury. This is what greets you when facing a frost dragon of no special name, yet plenty of power. It's a storm, not just of snow, but of winter's full wrath. Hail crashing down hard enough to crush the steel frame of any carriage. It seems the old creators, those unseen hands behind the world, chose to repurpose the jagged earthspike magics into glacial form here, just to add a hint more peril. Then there is Infernal Breath, a chill name, no doubt. When this is used, a torrent of hellfire bursts forth, swirling with a power that goes beyond mere flame. It holds within it the ability to conjure terrifying creatures from realms best left unnamed. You'll see it unleashed in the final clash with Kyogre Tid, far in southern Elsewhere. The breath he exhales during that battle crackles with what can only be called Darkian energy. What it births is unnerving. Hulking, corrupted Khajiit wreathed in ghoulish shadows. Some would mark this shout simply as a dark eon breath and leave the matter there. But I've taken some liberties in thought. If you look closely at the patterns of how shouts evolve, you'll notice they shift depending on their source of energy. Just consider this. Shouts grow stronger with time, with mastery, with experience. And the words themselves, they aren't strictly tethered to this particular brand of Aeon darkness that Cow Gruntier seems endlessly drawn to. So perhaps, just perhaps, he wielded this shout long before he ever stole the moon's light. Then there's Lightning Breath. Solve Oxlade. The name rings like thunder. A fierce stream of pure current unleashed in a blinding arc. Storm dragons to use this, sometimes in silence, sometimes with a voice. Strange, isn't it? But it's one of the finest, if you ask me. There's something beautiful about that clean line of searing electricity, drawn like a blade across the sky. And finally, Meteor Storm. No subtlety here. It brings down the heavens in roaring fury. Meteors crashing earthward with the rage of ancient stars. Then there's Moonblast, a cry of desperate lunar energy, another gem pulled from Malimia's repertoire of arcane devastation. This one is so potent that surviving it requires shelter inside Abnathar's magic shield. Without it, you're lost. And unlike his companion who drains Darkian power, Malimia's shout here pulls from something different. The words of power include the moon itself. Considering how deeply the moons tie into elsewhere's tales and rituals, it's not far-fetched to say this shout channels raw moon energy, a force as old as the sky. Next is plate breath. It hurls poison bombs, thick, noxious projectiles that corrupt the air. You'll only see it during the Thurgood can battle deep in Fang Lair. The only defense: step inside a magic circle or prepare to fall where you stand. It's almost tragic that this shout exists in only one encounter. Just imagine the possibilities. A stealthy dragonborn weaving poison into the winds of Skyrim's cold nights. Then comes the unsettling Rees, dead, whispered in dread. Look till old. This shout conjures a graveyard where skeletal horrors rise. Any common dragon across Elsewhere might summon this, turning peaceful ground into a battleground of the undead. Whether it's just illusion, a chilling visual for effect, or something more substantial is hard to say. But if a dragonborn mastered this shout, who's to say it wouldn't raise the dead from any forgotten graveyard? One thing's clear: the skeletal foes born from this are no mere bones. There's siphoned moonlight. This one doesn't attack, not directly. It draws the essence of the moon itself and channels it into another. In the case told by the southern winds, it was used to feed power from the devouring master, Carl grunted, directly into Mjolnir during their climactic duel. His way of guaranteeing victory. But, as stories often go, cheaters never win. And there was only one path left open once that truth unfolded. Summon Atronach. Summons an Atronach. Straightforward, really. What kind you get depends entirely on the dragon that bellows it out. If it's a storm dragon, prepare for a crackling storm. Atronach, fire dragon. Well, you already know. You'll run into this shout often during those wild, open sky clashes with dragons across the land. It's common, but no less deadly for it. And now, summon Strangler. This shout births stranglers, those grotesque, plant-like things rooted into the ground when Marcellus spawns them. They come tainted with azablite, lobbing poison at your allies while spectral spiders crawl and bite through the chaos of the encounter. Just like before, the output of the shout changes based on who's shouting. A pattern emerges. Then we reach Summon Worm. Tivmerta uses this one, summoning ghostly scaled creatures you've probably seen slithering about in Skyrim. Marsalek also makes use of it, conjuring a swarm of the eerie little things during his fight. And again, the kind of worm seems to reflect the caster. Marsalek, being deeply connected to the Azure Blight, spawns blight-corrupted versions of these worms. Fitting, really. And then there's Time Summon, a shout that drags an eternal servant from the folds of time itself into the present. It's not exactly straightforward though. Navitus uses this shout to do more than just summon. He uses it to tear at the very fabric of a time wound, prying it further open. An eternal servant could mean many things, perhaps a being imprisoned in some lost timeline, now dragged back into reality. But here's the twist. Navitus doesn't just summon. He speaks as if offering redemption, like he's giving these relics of the past one more chance to correct their failures. That's some god complex, if you ask me. And intriguingly, in Skyrim, the shout to slow time can actually unsummon these time-bound entities. He says, "I have reordered time." A neat trick, if a bit unsettling. Then there's Unrelenting Pull. That one's better. It teleports a target, person, beast, or otherwise, right to the caster. You'll see this used by Balak Dan during the siege of Riverhold. He tears open a rift and yanks you through it, likely to stop you from fleeing to places he can't reach. It's not just brutal, it's clever. And it's a perfect example of how shout mechanics have been turned into MMO-style boss tools. And now, that's the full set of dragon shouts introduced with Elder Scrolls Online. It proves something we've long suspected, that dragons can uniquely shape their shouts depending on who or what they are. But there's one final category left, whispered in the corners of the lore. The unlearnable shouts. The ones from the Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim itself. You can't learn them, not through normal means, but their words of power can still be heard if you listen closely. There are 8. Let me take you through them. Devour Soul, a shout that instantly absorbs the soul of a dragon. This is Mirok's signature move at the summit of Apocrypha, where he uses it to consume the souls of his fellow Dover. It's a 4-syllable shout, rare, strange, even clumsy with that extra intransitive verb. But we know some shouts were invented by mortals, Dragonrend being a prime example. Mirok never seems to use this shout without addressing a dragon directly, which leads to speculation. Perhaps there's a command syntax baked into the structure, something that prevents accidental soul-devouring. Then again, Mirok wouldn't care, would he? Open lock. Not the official translation, of course, but it does open locks. Skyrim never gave us the full 3 words of power, but during the Whirlwind Sprint lesson, Bori casts the first syllable. So where do we get the rest? ESO, somewhere in its buried dialogue files, the full shout is there. It's never used explicitly in-game, but the shout feels complete nonetheless. Phantom Form. A shout that summons a ghostly image of yourself. Great for practice, for misdirection, maybe even trickery in combat. The Greybeards can use it, and with a little console magic, so can you. Perhaps Bethesda simply ran out of time, or decided it wasn't worth the effort to flesh out. Resurrection. We catch Duin using this in the main quest, presumably more than once. It's different from your average necromancy. Dragons, as we've seen in ESO, do tend to dabble in death magic, but this shout appears to restore life in full. I wonder if any of the ancient 500 companions tried to learn it. Perhaps it's something only dragons can ever truly wield. Return to Nirn, a practical shout, if anything. The hero's son uses it in the Sovngarde finale to send you back to the land of the living. It likely functions the same even for travelers stuck in other planes. Oblivion, perhaps. The words of power seem tailored to bring the living back from lands where they do not belong. Soulcairn, summon, a cry to call forth a horde from the Soulcairn. Dernovir uses this often, and it shows up again with dragons in ESO. The shout likely draws from words tied to the Soulcairn itself. Perhaps the devs ran short on time with the DLC, but the idea lingered. Soul Fog, then Volweaken, a mist that blinds and traps souls. Alduin uses it in Sovngarde, cloaking himself in it to feed on the lost and the damned. It's dramatic, and had the Dragonborn possessed this shout, I imagine it would have been perfect for a silent, ghost-walking rogue, the kind that slips into the mist and never gets seen again. And lastly, summon Davakian. Yes, you heard right. Think about it. The shouts that summon Odavian and Durnavir are literally their full names. So when the Greybeards called you to High Hrothgar, they used the same principle, a shout meant to summon you, and you answered. And so, as the last echoes of the dragon tongues fade into the night, we find ourselves at the end of our journey through the ancient and mighty shouts of the Elder Scrolls universe. From firestorms to soul fogs, from summoning spectral servants to pulling foes through time itself. We've wandered the mythic path of the Thaum, spoken in battle, whispered in secret, and etched into the very bones of Nian. These words are more than magic. They are echoes of a forgotten world, fragments of a language older than men, Mer, or even the stars, whether gifted to mortals by the gods, stolen from dragons by rebels, or shaped by the will of heroes. Each shout holds a story, and together they tell the tale of power, of those who would bend the world with their voice. Good night, traveler. May your dreams be free of Alduin's shadow and full of sweet rolls.